My husband walked through our front door with a strange woman beside him, and the first thing I noticed wasn't her smile. It was the way he wouldn't look me in the eyes. That was the moment everything quiet inside me turned loud. The clatter of dishes in my hands, the soft hum of the refrigerator, even the ticking wall clock that usually blended into the background, suddenly it sounded like it was keeping score of something I hadn't caught on to yet. I remember I was standing in our kitchen, wiping down the counter, still wearing the floral apron my mother gave me back when I first learned how to keep house. My hair was tied back, my slippers worn down at the heel, just an ordinary Thursday evening. And then he walked in. "Baby, this is my sister, Alana," Marcus announced. Sister. I turned around slowly, dish towel still in my hand. And there she was, a slim woman in a charcoal gray dress, suitcase in hand, her eyes darting around the room like she was measuring the place. But what shook me wasn't her being there. It was the way she and Marcus exchanged a quick glance, one of those too fast, too familiar looks that feel like stepping on a shard of glass, a sting you can't place yet. I swallowed softly. "You never mentioned a sister." Marcus laughed, but it came out thin, like a curtain barely hanging on its rod. "It slipped my mind. It's, complicated." He rubbed the back of his neck. He always did that when he was lying. "She needed somewhere to stay for a while." The woman stepped forward with a polite smile. "Nice to meet you. Thank you for letting me stay." Her voice was warm, but her eyes, they didn't match. They were studying me, slowly, deliberately, like she had already memorized this moment 100 times before stepping into it. And right then, something tightened inside my chest. Not jealousy, not insecurity. Something deeper. Something like recognition, but of what I couldn't say. I gave a small nod. "Make yourself at home." But inside my mind, 100 tiny questions began stacking up, neat as folded laundry. Before that night, my life with Marcus wasn't perfect. No marriage is, but it was stable, predictable in the ways that make you feel safe. We'd been married 12 years, long enough to know the rhythm of each other's breathing at night, long enough to tolerate each other's bad habits, me leaving cabinet doors open, him leaving his socks anywhere but the hamper. I worked as a home health aide. Marcus was a security supervisor at the shipping depot. We weren't rich, but all our bills got paid, and every couple of months we'd treat ourselves to a dinner date, usually someplace with warm lighting and 2 small menus. That day had started like any other. Marcus kissed me quick before work, coffee breath warm on my cheek. "Love you, babe." "Love you too. Drive safe." He always drove the long way, said the route calmed him. I watched him pull out of the driveway like I always did, sipping the last of my coffee. Nothing, absolutely nothing hinted at the storm rolling toward me. Around noon, I ran errands, picked up fresh lemons from the corner store, stopped by the pharmacy for Marcus's back paint patches. The clerk asked how my day was going, and I said, "Good so far." Funny how we say things without knowing they're about to become untrue. By late afternoon, I was home cleaning, dinner simmering on the stove, red beans and rice, his favorite, humming along to an old R&B playlist. The sun was starting its slow slide down the sky, pouring gold into the living room. Everything was quiet, peaceful. And then the door opened, and in came Marcus and that woman. Marcus never brought anyone home without calling first, and certainly not someone who needed a place to stay. I glanced at the suitcase again. Medium-sized, worn edges, a small airline tag still hanging from the zipper with the name scribbled off, like someone didn't want it read. "Alana's had a tough time. She just needs a few days, maybe a week." A week. Funny how that word can feel like a pebble rolling downhill, small at first, but gathering speed. I forced a smile. "You're welcome to stay. I'll set up the guest room." "Oh, no need," Alana said quickly. But Marcus shot her a look, a warning one. That's when the first real alarm bell chimed in my chest. Not loud, not dramatic, more like the whisper of a draft slipping under the door. I nodded, walked toward the hallway. Right this way. Her steps followed behind me, soft but perfectly in sync with mine, like she was matching my pace on purpose. Halfway to the guest room, I felt her eyes on the back of my neck. Not curious eyes that knew something. When I opened the door and switched on the light, I stepped aside for her to walk in. She paused at the threshold. Her fingers brushed the doorframe, slow, almost affectionate, as if she was touching something she remembered, not something new. "This is perfect," she said. Her smile was polite, but her expression, it wasn't. And that's when it hit me. This woman wasn't acting like a guest. She was acting like she had the right to be here, like she had been here before. When I went back to the kitchen, Marcus was wiping invisible dust off the counter, something he only did when he was anxious. I walked over to him. "So," I said softly, "you want to tell me what's going on now?" Marcus tensed. Just a flicker, but I caught it. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw tightened, his eyes dropped to the floor like the truth weighed too much for him to carry. "It's just family stuff," he muttered. "Don't make it a big deal." A small, cold knot formed in my stomach. I had learned over 12 years of marriage that when a man says, "Don't make it a big deal," it's already a big deal. I opened my mouth to push a little more, but then Alana appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame like she belonged there. "Dinner smells amazing," she said with a soft, warm tone, and Marcus exhaled, long, relieved, like she had rescued him from answering. That was the moment I knew this wasn't family. This wasn't a sister. Whatever story Marcus was hiding, that woman was woven deep into it. And I was standing at the edge of something I didn't yet understand. June's arrival changed the air inside my home, not just the noise or the clutter of her suitcases, not even the sharp scent of her lavender lotion that clung to every room she walked through. It was something heavier, something invisible, like the house itself was holding its breath. The first week, I kept telling myself it was fine. Temporary, a passing storm, a test of patience or grace or whatever people called it when life handed you something you never asked for. But by the second week, I realized June hadn't moved in. She had taken over. It started with the kitchen. One morning I went to make breakfast and found everything rearranged, plates moved, cups stacked differently, the spices, mine, carefully labeled, dumped into mismatched jars because she didn't trust my system. Daniel walked in as I stood there holding a half-empty cumin jar with the lid off. "Did you see what your mother did to the pantry?" I asked. He gave a tired shrug. "She's just helping." I stared at him. "Helping? Daniel, she moved everything." "She didn't mean anything by it." Then he leaned in and kissed my forehead. "Let her feel useful." Useful. As if she didn't feel useful unless she was undoing everything I'd built. Then she moved on to Lily's room. I walked in one afternoon and found June sitting on my daughter's bed, folding her clothes into piles. "June," I said gently, "I've got it, really." She didn't look up. "I'm only doing what you seem too tired to keep up with." My jaw clenched. "I'm not tired." Her smile was thin, sharp at the corners. "Then why does it look like you're always falling behind, Mary?" That night, I cried quietly in the bathroom while Lily brushed her teeth beside me, humming to herself. Because I knew the truth. June wasn't helping. She was undermining, one choice at a time, one drawer at a time, one room at a time. And somewhere between her whispering suggestions and Daniel's slow drift toward her version of truth, my home stopped feeling like mine. The moment everything shifted from discomfort to fear happened on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. I had just come back from picking up Lily from preschool. Her little hand was still sticky with the grape lollipop her teacher gave her. She was babbling about a boy in her class who knew how to whistle. When I pushed open the front door, I froze. June was sitting at the dining table with a large brown envelope spread open in front of her. Papers were scattered everywhere. She flinched when she saw me, just slightly, before composing her expression into something neutral. Too neutral. "Mary," she said, smoothing the papers, "you're home early." It was the second time she said that phrase to me, not with surprise, but with irritation, as if my own arrival in my own home was interrupting her routine. "Are those ours?" I asked, gesturing to the papers. She paused, then nodded. "House documents." My heart thudded. "What are you doing with them?" She exhaled slowly, as if she was teaching a child. "Daniel wanted me to look over them. He's worried things aren't being managed correctly." I stepped closer. "Managed how?" She lifted a single paper, a copy of our mortgage, and slid it toward me. "Tell me, Mary," she tilted her head, "why is the account 3 months behind?" The world tilted. I grabbed the paper with shaky fingers. "That's not possible." She shrugged. "Things slip when women are overwhelmed." I opened my mouth, then closed it, because I did feel overwhelmed, not by life, but by her. But the mortgage wasn't behind. I checked it every month. I paid it every month. I have receipts. "You're mistaken," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "I make the payments. They're up to date." She crossed her arms. "Well, someone isn't telling the truth." The next words came out slow, measured. "Where is Daniel?" Her eyes flickered. That tiny moment told me everything. "He's out," she said, "running errands." At 4 in the afternoon? On a workday? I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. My husband wasn't just withdrawing from me. He was siding with her. That night, I waited. He came home later than usual. He smelled like outside air, stale coffee, and sawdust. But beneath it all, I sensed something unfamiliar, something secretive. "Daniel," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He dropped his tool bag on the floor. "Can it wait?" "It can't." June appeared from the kitchen doorway like she'd been listening. She stood there silently, her presence practically filling the room. I gestured toward the papers on the table. "Why did you ask your mother to look at our mortgage?" His jaw tightened. "I trust her judgment." I'd blinked. "And not mine?" His shoulders rose and fell. "You're stressed lately, distracted." My throat burned. "Daniel, I'm not distracted, I'm—" June cut in. "Sweetheart, he's not blaming you. He's just saying the house might be too much for you to handle." "Too much? My house, my life, my daughter. It's not too much," I snapped before I could stop myself. June lifted her eyebrows as if my reaction proved her point. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've been so emotional." "Emotional?" I whispered. My voice shook, not with anger, but with disbelief. His mother stepped closer to him, placing a hand on his arm. "Why don't you rest, Mary? Daniel and I will sort the paperwork." Something inside me broke cleanly in that moment, silently, like glass cracking under pressure, because I realized he didn't defend me, not once. The next morning, things got worse, much worse. I came home from dropping Lily off at school and found June in the living room with 2 men, strangers, wearing crisp shirts and holding clipboards. One of them looked up. "Ah, you must be Mary. We're here to do the walkthrough." "The what?" I asked. "The property evaluation," he replied. "Mr. Carter requested it." My breath stilled. Property evaluation? As in for sale? I turned to June, who stood with her arms folded across her chest, a satisfied little smile on her lips. "Did Daniel tell you?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "He wants to make sure everything is in order." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "This is my home," I said quietly. "You can't just do this without talking to me." One of the men cleared his throat. He said he had full authority to proceed. June nodded beside him. "And he does." I stood there frozen, watching two strangers walk through my living room, my walls, my memories, my child's framed drawings, touching things, measuring things, evaluating things. And I realized something was happening behind my back, something bigger than June reorganizing my cabinets, something more dangerous than mortgage papers and whispered conversations. She wasn't just trying to control the house, she was trying to take it. I didn't realize how quickly peace can turn into pressure until the small things began piling up. Innocent on the surface, but sharp enough to scratch at the back of my mind. It started 2 weeks after Rebecca moved in. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to make tea before work. I always wake up earlier than everyone. Quiet mornings help settle my thoughts. But that day, as soon as I stepped into the kitchen, I froze. Every cabinet door had been reorganized. My cups, which always sat on the second shelf, were now on the top one. The spices I arranged by frequency of use were pushed to the corner like an afterthought. Even the oil bottles were moved into a drawer I never touched. At first, I laughed under my breath. "Rebecca must be trying to help," I whispered to myself, opening and closing unfamiliar cabinet doors. But as I looked around, my smile faded. Everything had been sorted the way she liked it, not the way we lived, not the way I cooked, not the way our home functioned. My home suddenly felt foreign. Just then, Rebecca walked in, tying her robe. "Oh, good," she said, stretching her arms. "I see you found the mugs." I swallowed. I did, though I'm still learning where everything went. She brushed past me, reaching for the kettle like she'd lived there her whole life. "Oh, I hope you don't mind," she said casually. "Your old system was a bit cluttered." "Cluttered?" I repeated, blinking slowly. "It's okay," she replied, patting my shoulder. "You have enough on your plate. Let me handle the domestic things." It shouldn't have bothered me as much as it did, but something in her tone, light, polite, and yet condescending, made my stomach tighten. I tried to laugh it off, but when I reached for a spoon and opened the wrong drawer again, I felt a small sting behind my ribs. It was my house, my kitchen, my rhythm, and suddenly I was the one making mistakes inside my own home. The second clue came from Daniel. I was in the living room folding laundry after work when he sat down with an exhale heavy enough to announce trouble. "Long day?" I asked. He rubbed his forehead. "You could say that." I paused. "Is it about your mom?" He didn't answer at first, which was answer enough. Finally, he murmured, "She's adjusting." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it?" He laughed, but it sounded tired. "She says she feels useless, like she's intruding." I folded one of his shirts sharply. "Well, she is intruding, but that doesn't mean she's useless." He gave me a look, half amused, half pleading. "You know what I mean," I said, softening. "She needs time." And I meant it. Despite my discomfort, I wanted Rebecca to feel safe. I wanted her to know that she wasn't alone. But then Daniel added something under his breath, something that stuck to me like glue. "She said she's worried you don't want her here." I froze, mid-fold. "What?" I asked carefully. He sighed. I know. I told her that's not true, but she insists she feels it. She said maybe she should have moved in with someone more welcoming." My mouth dried. "Welcoming?" I repeated. Daniel nodded. "She thinks you're uncomfortable having her here." I stared at him, shocked by the twisted version of the truth. "I opened our home to her," I whispered. "How could she think that?" He didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he didn't want to. But that night, as I lay in bed with Daniel snoring softly beside me, a seed of worry took root. If Rebecca felt unwelcome, if she believed I didn't want her there, if she began telling Daniel things, what story was she trying to build? Then came the day I found her in my bedroom. It was a Saturday morning. I had just finished washing the sheets and opened the door to the bedroom when I saw Rebecca standing near my dresser drawer. My underwear drawer. I gasped before I could stop myself. "Oh," she said, startled, "you're back early." "Back where?" I asked, my voice cold with confusion. She smiled lightly, closing the drawer with her fingertips. "I was just tidying up." "In my bedroom?" I asked slowly. "In my drawers?" She waved her hand, unbothered. "Well, this is all our home now, isn't it?" A chill rolled down my spine. "No," I said gently but firmly. "This is my bedroom. You don't have to clean anything here. Please just leave it as it is." Her eyes flickered, only for a moment. Annoyance? Hurt? Injury? It was gone before I could name it. "Of course," she said with a tight smile, "I didn't mean to upset you." But the way she brushed past me, the way she didn't look at me, the way she closed the door behind her with a little more force than necessary, it didn't feel like apologizing. It felt like retreat, like she was building a case, like she was making her point. Over the next week, the atmosphere in the house shifted, subtle things. Daniel became quieter when discussing home decisions. Rebecca began staying in the living room whenever I walked in, pretending to read, but glancing up each time like she was taking mental notes. I overheard her whispering to Daniel more, the tone low and urgent. Once, when I approached, they switched topics too quickly, so quickly that the silence felt heavy, suspicious. And then, one evening, I came home earlier than usual. I walked in quietly, dropping my purse on the entry hook. From the kitchen, I heard Rebecca's voice, soft, trembling, perfectly distressed. "She doesn't like me here," Daniel said. "I can feel it. I see it. She's always tense, always judging." My breath hitched. Daniel's voice was quiet, unsure. "Mom, she's trying." "No," Rebecca insisted. "She wants me out. I can tell." My heart pounded so loudly I could feel it echo in my throat. This wasn't just insecurity anymore. This was narrative, intention, a story being shaped around me. I stepped back before they saw me, slipped into the bathroom, and closed the door. I stood there gripping the sink, breathing hard. Why would she twist things like that? Why would she want Daniel to see me as the enemy? Why would she push this story so hard? The suspicion was growing fast now, quiet but undeniable. Something wasn't right. At all. And soon, I would learn exactly why. Because Rebecca didn't just want a place to stay, she wanted control. Control of the house, control of Daniel, control of the story. And soon, she would go after something I never imagined someone could try to take from me, my home itself. I didn't realize how quickly a home can turn hostile until the day everything finally snapped into place, like pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know I was assembling. It happened on a Thursday evening. I had worked late and the winter rain made traffic heavy. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for a soft glow from the living room lamps. I walked inside quietly, shaking off my umbrella, hoping for a warm meal or at least Daniel's familiar laughter. But instead, I heard voices, low and tense, Daniel's and Rebecca's. I paused in the hallway, hidden by the shadow near the coat rack. "I'm just saying," Rebecca whispered urgently. "She's not acting like a wife who cares about this family." My breath caught. Daniel's voice sounded tired. "Mom, please, not this again." "No, listen to me," she insisted. "She's distant, cold. You don't see the way she looks at me." I pressed my lips together, feeling anger prickle under my skin, but I stayed hidden. Then Rebecca lowered her voice even more. "She doesn't want me here." Daniel sighed. "Mom, please, just calm down." But Rebecca wasn't done. "And honestly, Daniel," her voice hardened, "I don't feel safe here." My hand flew to my mouth. "Safe? In my home?" "Not safe," Daniel repeated. Rebecca sniffed dramatically. "She's unpredictable. I don't know what she'll do next." A silence stretched, so long I could hear the clock in the hallway. And then Rebecca said the words that cracked something inside me. "I think we need to talk to a lawyer." Daniel exhaled sharply. "A lawyer? For what?" "To protect myself," she cried, "before she does something drastic." My knees weakened. I leaned against the wall for support. She wasn't just painting me as unwelcome. She was painting me as dangerous, a threat, something more sinister than mere discomfort. Daniel's voice trembled. "Mom, this is going too far." "No," insisted Rebecca, "it's not far enough. I know people, women who lost everything because their daughters-in-law kicked them out without warning. You need to think about the future. Think about the house." "The house?" Daniel echoed slowly. "Yes, this house. It's your family's legacy. You paid for it. You deserve to protect it." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. What was she getting at? Rebecca leaned closer. I could hear her voice clearly through the living room's archway. "I'm telling you this because I love you, but she might not, and she might take the house from both of us." Take the house? I would take the house. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Almost. But the laughter died in my throat when I heard the unmistakable sound of paper rustling. Rebecca pulled something from her bag. "I spoke to someone," she confessed. "They said if she starts acting hostile, we can file for occupancy rights." Occupancy rights? I didn't know much about legal terms, but I knew enough to understand one thing. She wasn't protecting herself. She was planning something that involved the house. My house. Our house. The home I had built with years of sweat, sacrifice, and endless love. Before I could step out, the doorknob to the hallway clicked. I scrambled back, just in time to appear as though I had just entered the house normally. Daniel walked toward me, startled. "Oh, hey, you're home." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Rebecca stood behind him, wiping imaginary tears. I forced my voice steady. "Everything okay?" Rebecca sniffed loudly. "Just a little misunderstanding, nothing you would care about." Her glare was sharp, quick, but unmistakable. I looked at Daniel. "What's going on?" He hesitated. That pause was the longest I'd ever felt in my life. Then he said softly, "We can talk later." I knew what that meant. He didn't want to talk in front of her, but he also didn't want to contradict her. Rebecca swept past me dramatically, brushing my shoulder deliberately. "I'll be in my room, if I'm even welcome there." She disappeared down the hallway like a storm cloud dragging rain behind it. Daniel sighed deeply, rubbing his temple, avoiding my eyes. I followed him quietly into the kitchen. He stood by the counter, fingers tapping nervously. "Daniel," I said gently, "what did she tell you?" He didn't meet my gaze. "She said you were talking about wanting the house to yourself again." I stared at him stunned. "Honey, that never happened." He swallowed. "She said she overheard you." "She's lying," I said firmly. The word hung between us, sharp, heavy, true. Daniel's eyes flicked upward, conflicted, torn. "You don't know what to believe." Those words stung more than anything Rebecca had done. I stepped closer, touched his arm, spoke softly. "Believe the woman you married, the woman who stood by you when you lost your job, the woman who took care of your mother when she was hospitalized, the woman who opened her home, our home, without hesitation." Daniel's shoulders deflated. But before he could answer, we heard Rebecca's voice from down the hall. "Daniel," she called weakly, "I don't feel well." He tensed and drifted toward her. I stood there alone in the kitchen, my hands slipping from his arm. That was the night I understood something I never imagined. Rebecca wasn't just uncomfortable in my house. She wasn't insecure. She wasn't anxious. She was plotting, not just against me, but against my marriage, my stability, my home. And she was willing to use fear, manipulation, and legal threats to do it. But I didn't know the worst part, the part that would flip my world upside down. The next morning, a letter came, a letter addressed to me from a lawyer, and that letter changed everything. The envelope was thick, heavy, official looking. My name was typed neatly across the front in bold black letters. I felt my hands tremble as I tore it open, the letterhead screaming legitimacy. Inside, the words were clear, deliberate, and devastating. This letter serves as formal notice that your mother-in-law, June Carter, is asserting temporary occupancy rights of the residence located at our address. Any interference with her occupancy may result in legal action. We advise you to vacate certain areas of the home immediately. I dropped the letter onto the kitchen counter, my vision blurred. Lily's toys sat scattered across the floor, oblivious to the chaos. My daughter's laughter, once a balm to my soul, now felt like a cruel echo. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to steady my racing mind. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a family dispute over boundaries. This was war, a calculated, premeditated attempt to steal my home while I slept, while I trusted the people I loved most. I called Daniel immediately. "Daniel, you have to see this." My voice shook. He appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Mary, what?" I held up the letter. He glanced at it, and I thought I saw a flicker of recognition, panic, maybe even guilt, before he masked it. This can't be real," he murmured. "It's real," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to remain calm. "She sent a lawyer. Daniel, she's trying to evict me from my own house." He ran a hand down his face. "Mary, please, don't overreact. It's just legal formalities. We can sort this out." I stared at him. Sort it out? Daniel, she's moving in without permission, spreading lies about me, and now she's trying to take what's mine. Daniel's expression hardened slightly, but he didn't argue further. Instead, he muttered, almost to himself, "Maybe we should have seen this coming." I felt my chest tighten. Seen this coming? I had trusted him to protect me. I had trusted him to see the truth. And now I realized how completely alone I was. That night, I paced the living room. Every room felt like a battlefield. Every corner, every window, every familiar scent, now tainted by the knowledge that she had planted her presence there deliberately. I thought back to the small moments, the pantry rearranged, Lily's bedroom disrupted, the whispered manipulations, Daniel's reluctant silence. It wasn't just control she wanted ownership, my home, my husband's loyalty, my daughter's love, and she would go as far as necessary to get it. The next morning, the confrontation. The next morning, I awoke early, determined to face the situation head on. I couldn't sit back while she schemed. I couldn't let my home be stolen without a fight. I entered the living room. June was already there, sipping coffee as if nothing were wrong. She glanced up at me with a serene, almost angelic smile. "Good morning, Mary," she said. "I hope you slept well." I gritted my teeth. "We need to talk." She set her cup down carefully, leaning back in her chair. "Of course. What about?" I held up the letter. "This. You sent this lawyer's notice. You're trying to evict me from my own house." Her eyes softened, practiced. "I'm just protecting myself, dear. You know how easily misunderstandings happen. I'm only making sure everyone is safe." "Safe?" I repeated, incredulous. "June, this isn't about safety. This is about control. You lied, you manipulated, and now you're trying to take what's mine." June's expression hardened slightly, but she didn't argue further. Instead, he muttered, almost to himself, "Maybe we should have seen this coming." I felt my chest tighten. Seen this coming? I had trusted him to protect me. I had trusted him to see the truth. And now I realized how completely alone I was. That night, I paced the living room. Every room felt like a battlefield. Every corner, every window, every familiar scent, now tainted by the knowledge that she had planted her presence there deliberately. I thought back to the small moments, the pantry rearranged, Lily's bedroom disrupted, the whispered manipulations, Daniel's reluctant silence. It wasn't just control she wanted ownership, my home, my husband's loyalty, my daughter's love, and she would go as far as necessary to get it. The ultimatum. That afternoon, Daniel finally confronted me privately. His face was grim, weary, and for the first time, I saw fear. "Mary, she's serious," he said quietly. "The lawyer, the papers, it's all real. She can legally claim occupancy if she pushes it." I shook my head. "Daniel, she doesn't have that right. Not without your consent, not without mine." His lips pressed together. "She's counting on you panicking. She's counting on you making a mistake. I don't know if I can stop her without a fight." "And if we fight?" I asked, my voice steady despite my tremor in my chest. "What happens to Lily? What happens to this home?" He looked down, unable to answer. I felt a fire ignite in me then, a fury I hadn't known I could summon. I realized that protecting my home wasn't just about bricks and mortar. It was about defending my life, my marriage, my daughter's childhood. It was about standing up to the woman who had spent years undermining me, slowly eroding the family I loved. That night, I drafted a plan. Every document she could manipulate, every room she could invade, every conversation she could twist, I would anticipate it. I would reclaim my authority in the home. I would prove that my place was not hers to take. And I would do it without losing myself, without losing Lily, and without losing the man I married. Because June Carter may have thought she could take my home, manipulate my family, and rewrite our story, she hadn't counted on me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready. The days that followed were a tense war of wills. Every morning I woke with the weight of the house pressing down on me. Every step I took, from the kitchen to Lily's room, from the living room to the front door, felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. June was everywhere at once, her presence both subtle and suffocating. She moved through the rooms as though she owned them, leaving small reminders of her authority, a new arrangement of furniture, a carefully folded stack of my husband's shirts, a handwritten note about the house rules stuck to the refrigerator. I knew then that this wasn't just about furniture or papers. This was psychological warfare. And I decided I wouldn't lose. I started quietly. First, I documented everything: receipts, bills, payment confirmations, every proof that the mortgage was up to date. I kept a record of each time June rearranged something in the house or interfered with my parenting. Photos, timestamps, and notes, all compiled into a folder labeled Evidence. Next, I recorded conversations, not secretively, but openly enough that if she questioned me, there would be proof of her manipulations. The way she twisted words, whispered fears into Daniel's ear, undermined me in front of Lily, I captured it all. Then I spoke with a lawyer of my own. "Mary," the attorney said after reviewing the documents, "you have a very strong case. Legally, your mother-in-law cannot force occupancy against your will. You own the home. Everything here is in your name. You have every right to protect your residence." Hearing those words ignited something in me, a mix of relief and righteous fury. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't at the mercy of someone who had spent years plotting against me. The next step was subtle but deliberate. I began to reclaim my spaces one by one. I rearranged the kitchen back to its original layout, carefully taking photos to show the before and after. I involved Lily, making it feel like a fun activity rather than a rebellion. Each drawer restored, each room reset, sent a message. This was still my home. I also started speaking directly to Daniel about what was happening, not in accusations, not in anger, but with clarity and evidence. "Daniel, look at this," I said one evening, spreading a stack of documents across the dining table. "This shows the mortgage payments, the bills, everything. And here," I held up the photos, "are the changes June has made without our consent. I need you to see the truth, not her version of it." For the first time, I noticed a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He no longer seemed torn, but alarmed. Fear replaced denial. I knew the ultimate moment would come soon. I needed a confrontation, not of shouting, but of exposure. I chose a morning when June expected Daniel to be away for work. I made breakfast with Lily, keeping everything normal. Then, when she came out to the living room, I spoke with calm authority. "June," I began, "we need to have a serious conversation." She tilted her head, as if amused by the drama. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" I held up a folder. This. Inside were the receipts, photos, and documented manipulations. I presented each piece methodically, explaining the timeline, the changes, the lies, the threats of legal action she had initiated. Her expression didn't change at first, but as I continued, I saw the cracks, small, almost imperceptible shifts, a tightening jaw, a hand brushing nervously at her lap, a glance toward the door as if calculating escape. "I don't know what to say," she murmured finally. "You don't need to say anything. The facts speak for themselves. The mortgage is current, Lily is happy, Daniel and I run this household together, and legally you have no right to occupancy against our will." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I could see the moment she realized her plan was unraveling. "You think this proves something?" she said finally, her voice low, tight. "Yes," I said calmly. "It proves that you cannot manipulate or threaten your way into someone else's home. It proves that your fear tactics will not work on me, on Daniel, or on Lily. And it proves that this house and this family is ours." After that confrontation, the dynamic in the house shifted immediately. June was quieter, less brazen. Her attempts to interfere slowed, then stopped. She still lingered, still tried subtle manipulations, but they no longer carried the weight of authority or fear. Daniel, now fully aware of her tactics, stopped blindly supporting her claims. He apologized for his earlier doubts and promised to be more vigilant in protecting our family. And Lily? She thrived in the restored stability, blissfully unaware of the emotional war her mother had fought, but benefiting fully from the victory. I had reclaimed not just my home, but my sense of control, my dignity, and my peace of mind. Standing in the living room one evening after June had gone out, I looked around. Everything was back in its place, our place. The warmth of familiarity returned. The smell of jasmine from the window still drifted through the air. I held Lily in my arms and whispered, "We're safe. This is our home, always." And in that moment, I realized something profound. Strength isn't just about physical endurance or confrontation. It's about patience, strategy, evidence, and unwavering resolve. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone rewrite your story. June Carter might have thought she could take what wasn't hers, but in the end, she underestimated me. I wasn't just defending a house. I was defending my life, and I had won. The weeks after the showdown felt like stepping into sunlight after a storm. June retreated, at first quietly, then with more finality. She spent longer stretches at her own home, calling occasionally, but the tone had shifted. No more manipulation, no more whispered conspiracies, no more attempts to control. She was still my husband's mother, but no longer a force threatening my family. Inside our home, the air was lighter. Daniel and I spent those weeks reconnecting, not just as partners, but as a team. We set new boundaries, clearly defined roles, and made decisions together about the house, Lily, and our daily life. "Mary," Daniel said one evening as we tucked Lily into bed, "I should have seen it sooner. I should have trusted you from the start." I took his hand, squeezing it gently. "It's not just on you. We were both navigating a situation we didn't fully understand. What matters is that we're here now." And we were, together, stronger than before, not because the challenge had ended, but because we had faced it together and refused to let it break us. Lily noticed the change too. She laughed more freely, her small world now safe from tension and fear. Our weekends returned to their familiar rhythm. Pancakes on Sunday, movie nights on Saturday, occasional park trips after school. I spent quiet moments alone in the living room, sipping tea and looking around at the spaces I had fought to protect. The jasmine still climbed the window frame, the morning light casting warm patterns across the floor. I realized something important. Home isn't just a building. It's safety, it's respect, it's the trust between the people inside. And I had learned that defending it requires courage, patience, and strategy, not just for yourself, but for the people who depend on you. June had tried to rewrite our story. She had assumed control through fear and deception, but she hadn't understood that a family bound by love and truth cannot be manipulated forever. I also learned the value of vigilance. Open doors and trust are vital in marriage and family, but boundaries matter just as much. Letting someone into your home or life is not just about hospitality, it's about mutual respect. And when respect is absent, it's okay to stand firm. Daniel and I had conversations we'd never had before about money, about trust, about parental involvement, and about how we would handle any future challenges together. We emerged not just as a couple, but as guardians of our family's integrity. One late afternoon, I stood at the window watching Lily chase a butterfly across the yard. The sun dipped low, casting golden light across our garden. I felt a calm I hadn't known in months, a sense of victory, yes, but also of peace. This house, our home, had been tested. It had been threatened, undermined, and almost stolen, but it survived. We survived, and in that survival, we found something stronger than fear: resilience, love, and the unshakable certainty that what belongs to you cannot be taken by deceit. When Daniel came up behind me, wrapping an arm around my waist, I leaned into him. "We're really home, aren't we?" I whispered. He nodded. "Yes, always." And in that moment, I understood. Some battles are fought in silence, some with evidence and strategy, and some in the quiet reclaiming of daily life. But victory, true victory, isn't just about winning a battle. It's about restoring your world, your family, and your sense of self. I had faced the storm, I had defended my home, and I had come out stronger, wiser, and more certain than ever. Nothing, not fear, not manipulation, not even the closest family member could take away what we had built with love and care. We were home, truly home. Even months after June's attempts to control our home, the echoes of those tense weeks lingered, not as fear, but as a cautionary reminder. I often found myself replaying moments in my head, the click of the lock on the front door, the scattered groceries on the cement, the way Daniel hesitated to defend me in our own home. Each memory was sharp, yes, but each also carried a lesson that reshaped how I viewed family, boundaries, and trust. What Juna tried to do wasn't just about moving in or reorganizing a kitchen. It was about control, about making me doubt my instincts, my abilities, my place in my own home. I realized then how insidious manipulation could be. It starts small, helpful gestures, subtle criticisms, but escalates quickly if left unchecked. What seemed like ordinary family dynamics became a battlefield of perception where my every action was scrutinized, reframed, and weaponized. I learned to trust my gut, to notice patterns, no matter how polite or loving they appeared, and most importantly, to act quickly before small disruptions could grow into crises. Daniel and I also learned a painful but necessary truth. Love alone isn't always enough. Even the strongest bond can be tested when one partner allows outside influence to override trust. We rebuilt our marriage by establishing clear boundaries with family, agreeing on shared decision-making, and prioritizing communication above convenience. We practiced transparency, no more whispered conversations that excluded the other, no more unspoken doubts about financial or household matters. Most importantly, we learned to advocate for each other, not defensively, but proactively. One of the hardest lessons was realizing that kindness does not mean submission. For years, I bent and accommodated June's critiques, believing it was the graceful thing to do. But grace without boundaries invites exploitation. I learned that defending your space, your dignity, and your family is not selfish, it is necessary. And it does not negate love. Love can coexist with firmness. In fact, love often requires it. Lily, my 5-year-old daughter, was the silent witness to much of this tension. Even though she didn't understand the full scope, she sensed the stress, the whispered arguments, the moments when I held back tears so she wouldn't worry. After the dust settled, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She laughed more freely, played more confidently, and even started organizing her own toys without needing constant guidance. In protecting our home, I had inadvertently modeled resilience and self-respect for her, a lesson far more valuable than any book or story could convey. June and I never fully resolved our differences. She remained a presence at family events, and we maintained a polite cordiality, but I stopped bending to her will. I stopped letting her narrative define our home. Forgiveness became less about absolving her and more about reclaiming peace. I chose not to dwell in resentment, but I also chose not to forget. Forgetting could have left me vulnerable. Remembering kept me vigilant. Today, our home is quieter, not in the absence of life or laughter, but in the sense of stability and safety we fought to reclaim. Daniel and I share chores, decisions, and responsibilities with mutual respect. Lily thrives in a home where boundaries are clear and love is consistent. I've kept my eyes open for manipulation in all forms, not just within family, but in friendships, work, and the outside world. The lessons of those months shaped my perspective. Respect your own boundaries, advocate for your rights, and protect your home, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Looking back, I realized that the most terrifying moments often reveal the deepest truths about ourselves and our relationships. June's attempt to take control of my home tested my patience, courage, and sense of self. But in facing it head on, I discovered strengths I didn't know I had. I learned the power of boundaries, the importance of partnership, and the necessity of self-respect. And as I stand by the window now, watching Lily chase sunlight across the garden, I know something else. Home is more than bricks and mortar. Home is the sanctuary you defend with love, vigilance, and unwavering resolve. We endured, we reclaimed, we grew, and in that growth lies the ultimate victory. After the chaos of those months, life gradually returned to a rhythm that felt truly ours. But returning didn't mean forgetting. It meant rebuilding on a foundation stronger than fear or compromise. The first thing we did was reclaim our home, literally and symbolically. We changed the locks, reorganized spaces according to how we lived, and reinstated routines that made sense for our family. Every corner became a reminder this was our sanctuary, not a stage for someone else's story. Daniel and I worked side by side, not just as husband and wife, but as partners protecting our shared life. We revisited bills together, discussed repairs openly, and made every important decision in tandem. Trust was no longer assumed, it was actively nurtured. With June, boundaries were established firmly, calmly, and with legal support where necessary. Visits were scheduled, not spontaneous, advice was given when requested, not imposed, and slowly she began to respect those lines, not fully, but enough that peace became possible. The lesson was clear. Boundaries are not walls, they are guidelines that protect love from turning into resentment. I also discovered a deeper sense of awareness within myself. I learned to recognize subtle manipulations early, to ask questions instead of letting doubt fester, and to trust my instincts over the whispered narratives of others. What I had initially perceived as peace, the quiet routine of daily life, was actually the result of constant negotiation and compromise. Now I understood that peace is not passive, it's proactive. It requires attention, care, and the courage to stand firm when necessary. Lily, too, became a quiet teacher. Her resilience, curiosity, and joy reminded me why I fought so hard for our home. She thrived in the clarity of rules and routines, in a space where love was consistent and trust was honored. Daniel and I noticed that our relationship deepened, not just in intimacy or companionship, but in the way we communicated and supported each other. We became vigilant partners, guarding not just our physical home, but the emotional safety within it. June remained a presence in our lives, but I approached her with a different mindset. I didn't seek her approval anymore, nor did I allow her behavior to dictate our peace. Forgiveness became a tool for my own liberation, not a reward for her actions. I learned that letting go of resentment does not mean erasing the past. It means choosing your own peace over perpetual conflict. It means acknowledging what happened, understanding why, and moving forward without carrying the weight unnecessarily. Standing in the kitchen one morning, watching Lily draw with crayons on the table, her laughter filling the room, I realized something profound. A home is defined not by who is allowed inside, but by the love, respect, and boundaries that are honored within its walls. Everything June tried to take from us, our sense of security, our authority over our home,
even our peace had been reclaimed. And in doing so, we found something stronger: confidence in ourselves, clarity in our relationships, and a renewed sense of belonging. I carry the lessons of that experience with me every day. I remain vigilant for manipulation, clear about my boundaries, and committed to the values that protect our family. But I don't live in fear. I live in awareness, prepared yet open to love and trust where it is deserved. I've also shared this story with friends, with other parents, with anyone who might feel powerless in their own homes. It's a cautionary tale, but also one of hope, that even when control is threatened, love, patience, and firm boundaries can restore what is rightfully yours. In the end, June's attempts did not destroy us. They did not weaken our family. Instead, they revealed the strength we already had and forced us to use it. My home is ours again, not because no one else ever enters, but because every person who does so understands the lines, respects the love that built it, and honors the boundaries that protect it. And as I watch Lily chase sunlight across the living room, I know this is the life I fought to keep, one defined by love, respect, and unshakable courage. We endured, we reclaimed, we grew, and we are finally, truly home. The dust had settled, but the lessons lingered like the scent of jasmine in our home, a quiet reminder of resilience, love, and vigilance. The months following the confrontation with June were not about punishment or revenge. They were about restoration. Daniel and I rebuilt not just our routines, but our partnership. We communicated openly, made decisions together, and ensured that our home became a space of collaboration, not conflict. Every room, every corner bore the mark of our choices, our love, and our renewed authority. I learned that boundaries are not barriers, they are protectors. Establishing clear, calm, and consistent limits with June allowed peace to return. She remained in our lives, but her influence was no longer a shadow over our home. Scheduled visits, requested advice, and mutual respect replaced intrusion and manipulation. More importantly, I learned to trust myself. For too long, I second-guessed my perceptions, worried about upsetting others, and let fear dictate inaction. Now, I acted decisively when necessary, recognized subtle manipulations early, and upheld the integrity of our home and family. Peace is proactive, not passive. Lily thrived in the stability we restored. Her laughter, curiosity, and joy reminded me daily why the fight was worth it. Daniel and I grew closer, not only as husband and wife, but as vigilant partners in safeguarding our emotional and physical home. Together, we created a sanctuary where love, respect, and trust flourished. June remained part of our lives, but I no longer sought her approval. Forgiveness became a tool for my liberation, not a reward for her behavior. Letting go of resentment meant choosing peace over perpetual conflict, acknowledging the past without carrying its weight unnecessarily. Standing in the kitchen one morning, watching Lily draw and laugh, I realized something profound. A home is defined not by who is allowed inside, but by the love, respect, and boundaries upheld within it. Everything June tried to take from us, our security, authority, and peace, was reclaimed, and in reclaiming it, we discovered strength, clarity, and belonging. I remain vigilant, aware of manipulation, and clear about boundaries, but I no longer live in fear. I live in awareness, open to love and trust where it is deserved, prepared to protect what matters most. Sharing this story has become a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles, that love, patience, and firm boundaries can restore what is rightfully yours. In the end, June's attempts did not break us. They did not weaken our family. Instead, they revealed the strength we already possessed and forced us to wield it. My home is ours again, not because no one else may enter, but because anyone who does understands the lines, respects the love that built it, and honors the boundaries protecting it. Watching Lily chase sunlight across the living room, I understand fully. We endured, we reclaimed, and we grew. We are finally, truly home.